Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. We're going to go ahead and get started here. We do have some refreshments and everything off to the left. Good afternoon. My name is Keith Grindstaff. I'm the Deputy Designated Federal Officer for the Northern New Mexico Citizens Advisory Board, and we're going to call this meeting to order. It's all yours, Manny.
I guess that was my cue. So, welcome to the Northern New Mexico Citizens Advisory Board September meeting. My name is Manny Lesperance. I'm the vice chair, and I'll be sitting in for Patricio, who's feeling under the weather today, but we're hoping he can join us online. So, with that, welcome to everybody that's here, the public, so folks that made it here online. And with that, I'd like to go around the room and do some brief introductions to for the board members. Just something about who you are, why you're here, and your role.
Hi, my name is Beverly Martin. This is my second term on the Citizens Advisory Board. I'm retired from Los Alamos, and I now live in Santa Fe County.
Good afternoon. My name is Sterling Grogan. I'm an ecologist. I live in Santa Fe, and I'm on the board because I'm concerned about being downwind and downstream from Los Alamos.
Abby Hayward. I'm a resident of Los Alamos County, New Mexico, and just interested in maintaining our water source protection.
Go ahead.
Good afternoon, everybody. Ricardo Maestas with the New Mexico Environment Department. I live in Las Vegas, New Mexico, and our main office is in Santa Fe. So I'm here to help support NMED with its updates. Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Megan McLean. I'm with the WIP permitting group for the Hazardous Waste Bureau at the New Mexico Environment Department, and I'm here to give the WIP update today.
Good afternoon. My name is John David Nance. I'm the Hazardous Waste Bureau Chief, and I'll be giving the LANL update from our side.
Good afternoon. My name's Troy Thompson. I'm with N3B. I'm the Environmental Remediation Program Manager for N3B. Giving you an update on our aggregate area work that we've been doing. So after EMLA update.
Well, Ellie's not here yet, but yeah, she's going to be doing a consent order update, and I think Cheryl Rodriguez is going to be doing the EMLA update for us. Oh. And my name's Keith Grindstaff, the DDFO.
As I stated, I'm Manny Lesperance. I'm retired from LANL after 37 years in emergency response, and just board and their actions just kind of suit my line of work. That's why I'm here.
Bridget Maestas, Executive Director of the Board.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Taos. Anise Santisteban, Senior Advisor to the Board.
Eleanor Bravo, Sandoval County, retired Southwest Director of Food and Water Watch. I'm here because I want to leave a legacy of clean water and clean air to our children and grandchildren.
Buenos días de la Dios. My name is Jose Villegas, Senior, Santa Fe County resident, Texas Band of Yaqui Indians, and the reason why I'm here is because I care.
Hi, my name is Arlena Romero Sanford, and I'm from Bernalillo County, and this is my first year on the board, and I'm here because I care about the environment.
Good morning, or afternoon, sorry. My name is Christy Green. I work for New Mexico State University and the New Mexico EDGE program. But I'm here as a private citizen this afternoon, having worked in water protection and advocacy for a couple of decades now, and I'm from Albuquerque. Happy to be here.
I am Mark Hayden. I'm from Santa Fe. I'm General Counsel for the state of New Mexico. I've got an engineering background too, and it gives me a chance at this venue to actually use it. I like to learn, analyze, and ask questions on behalf of the public and then communicate that to everybody I know. So that's my mission on this cab. Thanks.
Thank you, Mark. We have several board members online. Patricia, would you like to start?
Sure. Good afternoon, everybody. I apologize I'm unable to be there in person. My name is Patricio Pacheco, representing Santa Fe, and I'm here because I want to have a safe environment for our future generations and our kids to grow up in. Thank you.
Thank you. Stephen?
Good afternoon. I'm Steve McLaughlin. This is my second term on the board. My apologies as well for being unable to attend in person. I'm here because I am both interested in the environment as well as in how these sorts of organizations in our government-public relationship function.
Thank you. And we have a honorary member here, our past chair, Elena, hiding in the corner back there. And now, before we get started, I'd ask everybody to please put your phones, pagers on stun so we don't have any disruptions. And we will begin with the review of the agenda. We'll begin by reviewing old business. We'll have an update from the chair and the vice chair, update from the subcommittee chairs, report from the nominating committee. Then we'll continue on with new business. We'll listen to our candidate statements, and we'll have our election of officers, and then we'll have an update from NMED, an update from EM Los Alamos Field Office, and I guess that'll be a combined update with N3B. My understanding, is that correct? Mm-hmm. Okay. Then we will have a 30-minute break, which may be condensed down to about 15. We'll see how that goes. Then we'll have an update from WHIP, and then move on to a public comment period, an update from DDFO, my partner here to my right, and adjourn. Hopefully we can get all this done and be out of here by our 5 o'clock schedule. So with that, I need a motion to approve the agenda.
Mark Hayden, motion to approve the agenda.
Do I have a second? And I have a second from Beverly. So with that, we'll start with old. I'm sorry? Oh, sorry. She promised to kick me in the leg every time I make a mistake. This is my first meeting, so if we do have an approval of the agenda, can I hear everybody say aye? Aye. And do we have anybody that disagrees? So I'd say pass. Okay, so we'll move on with old business. We'll have an update from the chair and the vice chair. And Patricia, do you have anything you'd like to bring up?
Yes, I did want to just bring up a great internship that N3B and EMLA has concluded recently. They provided 3 students an opportunity to go up to the lab and do some environmental field work and get on-job experience. So I did want to give kudos to N3B and EMLA for supporting our community and our local kids.
Okay. Anything else, Patricia?
That's all I have for new news.
Okay, thank you. I just have a couple of real quick things. Bridget has sent out some emails to everybody, one on the strategic vision, if anybody wanted to provide any comments. I don't know if you've had a chance to look at that and maybe provide those comments, but if you haven't, please do so. They'd like to get our feedback, and I'm sure hopefully they'll be wanting to hear from us. And the second was on the WHIP information exchange. She provided us the meeting is going to be September 23rd, and there's an opportunity for us to participate on Zoom if you wish to do so. And everybody should have those emails. If you don't, just holler at Bridget and we'll make sure you get that. That is my update. Do we have any, we can move on with that to any updates from the subcommittee chairs. And I'm not sure who is who on the subcommittee chairs, so if it's you, speak up. Mark?
Yeah, I don't have a lot to share as far as accomplishments, but our goal is to put together with the work plan to sync those with the goals of the EMLA and to put that in place this year. But we haven't had that meeting yet. It's scheduled and we'll do it soon. Thank you. Oh, Mark Hayden, Chair of Consent Order Committee.
Okay. Beverly?
Hi, I'm Beverly Martin. The Risk Committee, we're still concerned about the chromium plume and trying to follow what's going on and waiting for more information on new wells put in and where is the plume going and stuff like that. But we're very concerned about that still.
Okay, thank you both. Bridget, do we have any information for the subcommittee chairs that we need to bring up? No?
No.
Okay. So we'll move on to a report from the nominating committee, and I believe that is Jose and Mark. What did we come up with?
I wanted to take the opportunity to just thank all our board members when I sent out the email right afterwards, right after the meeting that we had, the CAB meeting, asking the question of if you were interested in being the chair or vice chair, et cetera, et cetera. We had a really good response, and it came out positive. I just want to just thank each one of you for just responding back to me. You know, I know that we've got busy schedules, and I'm really happy that many of you want to be part of this board. And in terms of a chair, vice chair, I think we have. I think we're going to do okay with the next topic coming around the corner. That's where it's at.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome, sir.
Mark?
I don't have much to add. I did send out a second set of emails just to make sure everybody got it, and those were copied to Bridget, who accumulated the comments and the recommendations. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. Any other questions to the nominating committee?
Ask them who was nominated. They need to report who was nominated.
Okay. Did we get, I guess I wasn't clear on who exactly was nominated for what. Did we get that? Do we have ballots? Are we going to pass out now?
After they do your count.
Okay, we'll pass out the ballots so you know who's in the running, and then we'll do the vote at a later time. How long is the list? Can we just announce that?
Okay, so what the nominating committee compiled is running for chair is Jose Villegas, Mark Hayden, and Patricio Pacheco. And running for vice chair is Manny Lesperance and Jose Villegas.
Okay. Okay, we'll move on to new business then. And with that, we'll start with candidate statements. With that, Patricio, you're up, my friend. Are you with us?
Yes, yes. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great. So I did just want to give a quick update. My name is Patricio Pacheco. I was been on the board for 4 years now. This is my third term reappointed, so I'm on my last term. I also am really involved in the community, and I'm a native New Mexican. I grew up in New Mexico, and went to school here at UNM, UNMLA, UNM main campus. Also went out to Mississippi State for a semester. I got a degree in engineering as well as environmental science. I got a background in soil science and also water quality. And I've been doing some work here with the community for the last 9 years. And I also did want to mention I grew up in and around Los Alamos, which is why I am so interested in the board and this legacy waste cleanup. So I've had numerous family members working up at the lab. I also got offered to work at the lab, but turned that down. I do have a daughter that's always having activities and has a dance class up in Los Alamos where she does ballet. So I'm really concerned about her situation there and always being up in the lab area. And also have some family members that are still working up there, which is why I'm so curious and involved in what's going on there. And so I just would like to continue my participation and continue the outreach and working with the public and setting forward these goals and communications and making sure people are aware of this legacy waste cleanup and all what's going on, because a lot of the time people don't really know or don't care, but I really want to get that information out to the public. That way we can get more people involved. So thank you guys again, and looking forward to serving you guys, whether it's the chair or just a member. Thank you guys.
Thank you, Patricio, and thank you for your service in the past as well. Mark, would you like to go?
Sure, Manny, I'm ready. So my background, I was an attorney for the last 35 years, worked in Chicago 5 years in private practice, then 20 years in corporate practice, in part representing Lloyd's of London. And the last 10 years since I moved to New Mexico, I've been working as the state general counsel for the state of New Mexico. I've been recently nominated, well, no, actually it's been confirmed, on the Santa Fe County Healthcare and Policy Commission. I am also the Aldea Homeowners Association president for about 500 people. And I've been for the last 2 years on the Federal Task Force for Sustainable Purchasing Best Practices. A little story on the background, I've always been involved with the environment since I was a little kid. I had a radio flyer wagon that I used to collect newspapers in the 60s. And then I had an eco backpack with the green and white stripes on the back of it. And went camping quite a bit, and anytime I could leave the house, I did. But when I was in a French Voyageur expedition on Lake Superior as an Explorer Scout after getting my Eagle Scout Award, we were in French garb with the fluffy sleeves and the capri pants and the sash, and I would dip water out of the lake and drink it until I got to the 3M site where they were mining. And they were dumping all the tailings into the water, and it looked really milky, and we were told we couldn't drink the water. And I asked the stupid question back when I was a little kid, it's like, well, who's gonna represent the fish in the lake? And that turned out to be me. So that's been my life goal, and part of the reason why I'm here. So thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Jose?
Mr. Chairman, board members, I've had a really deep thought and conversation with my family, and I decided that I would like to withdraw from as running for the board chair, and I would focus on supporting as a board member here and support Patricio and nominate him for the chair. I think that he exhibits good character, honesty, dignity, and I'm really into that. And he has shown his colors. So I want to support him. So I'm going to withdraw. And thank you for the support, board members, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Now, is that you're withdrawing from the chair and the vice chair, or just the chair?
The chair and the vice chair. The vice chair, thank you for bringing that up. I would love to support you. You are a good man. You have the qualities and the leadership to guide and assist all of us, take care of us. So I will withdraw from that as well, but support you as the vice chair.
Thank you for your kind words. I'll give you my mother's phone number later. You can give her a call.
You're very welcome, sir. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you. Okay, with that, is there anybody else that would like to throw their name in the hat, that had some second thoughts, that might be interested in signing up and leading us forward? I take that as a no. So with that, I don't know how we intend to, we'll pass out the ballots now. And I don't know if you're going to just strike Jose's name or
Yeah.
however you want to do that. Okay.
We'll pass out the ballots.
So we'll
and then
pass out the ballots and we'll give you a minute.
We'll collect them, we'll go forward on the agenda, and once we get an answer, we'll.
Okay, I don't know if you heard that, but we'll pass out the ballots and you can go ahead and make your selections, and we will continue on with the meeting and the updates, and then we'll collect the ballots at a later time. It's reasonable? Okay. So while they're passing those out, we can go ahead and begin the update from NMED, and you have the floor.
Good afternoon, board, chair, and all that are attending. And once again, my name is John David Nance, go by JD. I'm the Hazardous Waste Bureau Chief, and I'm just going to I'll give the LANL update for the pieces that we have on our side. So I'm going to start off with the consent order, the current one that was in place previously. For the Appendix B for the schedule, the appendix was submitted in July 31st by DOE to NMED. We did not agree with the proposed appendix, the way it was received. NMED and DOE have been participating in regular negotiations to reach consensus on that schedule for FY25. That's currently going on, and we're still working through that piece. On August 30th, 2024, NMED and DOE signed a settlement agreement to resolve the litigation filed by NMED in 2021. So that is the court-ordered consent order. We had negotiations that have been ongoing since 2021. It resulted in the settlement agreement and the modified consent order, which is going to be the new one moving forward. With that, NMED will be hosting a community forum on September 26, 2024. That's next week, Thursday. That will be to discuss the modifications and allow an opportunity for questions. The meeting will be from 5:30 to 7:30 p.m. at the Harold Runnels Building Auditorium in Santa Fe, New Mexico. The modified consent order and the public notice for the community forum, they are available on the Hazardous Waste Bureau website. So moving on to the groundwater discussions on the chromium plume. So the drilling for R76 monitoring well, that began on September 21, 2023. Due to permit drilling variance issues, that drilling was delayed. The completion was delayed. DOE is completing the well construction and the testing portion of it. The letter report documenting the completion of R76 is due to NMED by the end of this month. Simmer 3, this is the proposed monitoring well located on Pueblo del San Ildefonso land. And it's the next monitoring well prioritized for completion. It is the monitoring well that is south of the known contamination, and it's south of the current injection monitoring well, south of the injection wells. So Pueblo de San Ildefonso, they did issue a determination on the type and number of monitoring wells, which stated that 2 single-screen monitoring wells for each proposed dual-screen well should be constructed. So they want instead of having a single dual-screen monitoring well, they want 2 wells, single screen at different depths to satisfy that. NMED issued a response to the Simmer 3 drilling work plan on July 31st, requiring that the work plan be revised to accommodate the Pueblo's determination, and we wanted that received within 30 days. With that, DOE did respond, stating that discussions with the Pueblo are ongoing, and the 30-day deadline will likely not be met. The Pueblo, as a sovereign nation, will determine whether the Simmer 3 work plan will be submitted to NMED. So they're, with them as a sovereign nation, they will have the jurisdiction over whether they can submit. Moving on to the chromium interim measures. Following recommendations from the Radioactive and Hazardous Materials Interim Committee and the Government Accountability Office, NMED and DOE are participating in an independent technical review of the measure. The ITR will provide recommendations for a path forward for the chromium interim measures. Both parties proposed experts, including members from DOE, members of academia, private industry, and the EPA to participate in that independent review. The review team is in the concluding phases of the recommendation, and we anticipate sharing the final recommendation with the public pretty soon. With that, the chromium IM has been shut down since the end of March of 2023. Communication towards the resumption of that began in September of 2023. NMED sent a letter to DOE that proposed conditions to allow injection that would facilitate extraction and the remediation of the chromium plume. But after multiple back and forth communications without reaching an agreement, NMED did propose a temporary restart of 3 injection wells while the independent technical review continues. That letter was sent to DOE on June 7th. NMED has not yet received a response from DOE. Let's see, corrective action documents. NMED issued a statement of basis for MDAC and held a 60-day public comment period, which 3 requests from the public hearing were received. The hearing requests were received from Triad National Security, ELM LA N3B, and from the Nuclear Watch of New Mexico. NMED is in the process of scheduling an informal conference with the hearing requesters and to discuss the scheduling of the public hearing. We anticipate the public hearing to be held in the first half of 2025. LANL permit-related activities. On March 20th, the EPA proposed amendments to the regulations for open burning and open detonation of waste explosives. The proposed rule would improve the evaluation of alternative technologies for treating waste explosives in lieu of OBOD. DOE is now reevaluating the permit application with consideration to the proposed rule, and NMED is waiting for the revised application. That concludes the LANL portion of our update. I'm going to hand it over to Megan.
Hi, I'm going to go over the WIP portion of the NMED update. I'm going to talk about some of the new conditions that we're monitoring that came into the permit during the recent renewal. First, I'm going to talk about the Legacy True Waste Disposal Plan. The purpose of this plan is to define the term legacy. This is being done in consultation with generator storage sites and stakeholders around the DOE complex. The permittees have been traveling to these different sites and discussing how they define legacy at each of them. The permittees have also held one public information exchange back in December, and they're planning to hold another one this coming Monday, September 23rd, from 1 to 3 on Zoom. The permittees produced a fact sheet on the topic, and NMED sent that out to both the WIP facility mailing lists and the LANL facility mailing lists. It's also posted on the DOE WIP webpage, which is devoted to that plan. And on that webpage also, there's a white paper that the permittees produced, and that has a brief summary of their activities related to this plan as of August 1st. The permittees have also given presentations on the plan at a few different forums to increase awareness. The plan is due to NMED by November 3rd, and then the public will have 60 days to submit comments to DOE on the plan. And any comments received will also be submitted to NMED. And NMED's been encouraging the permittees to share a draft of the plan to both NMED and the public ahead of that November 3rd submittal, and ideally ahead of the September 23rd information exchange on Monday. Next, I'm going to talk about WIP community forums. Those used to be held by the permittees prior to them being put in as a permit condition by NMED, but NMED feels very strongly about public participation and wanted to enshrine those in the permit. So now those have to be held 3 times a year in communities around New Mexico. The first one was held this year in Roswell, New Mexico, and then they held one in Carlsbad, New Mexico in July, and there's an upcoming one in Las Vegas, New Mexico on October 24th. A public notice should be out soon for that one. These forums provide opportunities for citizens to ask questions and to provide comments on any issues related to the WIP facility. This is beneficial to NMED as the regulator as well, as it reduces the number of comments that we receive on permit modifications that are either outside our purview or aren't pertinent to the modification being processed at the time. These forums are also an opportunity for DOE to educate the public regarding risk and to provide transparent information on the facility. The permittees have done an excellent job improving these forums, especially by the way in which they're addressing comments that they were unable to answer at one forum. They're having a slide at the end of the next forum's presentation that has the answers to all the questions they were unable to answer. And they also have made subsequent improvements to the format of their forums with each one that has occurred, and they're making them more user-friendly for stakeholders. The next condition I'm going to talk about is a Class 2 that we processed in June of this year. At the last CAB meeting that I attended in Santa Fe, we had discussed this modification, and it has been approved by NMED. It is a condition that we worked closely with stakeholders and the permittees to get the permit language better. It's called a graded approach to audits. And this condition requires the permittees to submit an annual audit schedule for NMED approval, and it allows them to request that small quantity generator storage sites that send waste to WIP be audited every other year as opposed to annually. This audit schedule must be accompanied by a risk-based analysis for the record on which NMED can base its decision for approval. The benefit of this is that reducing the audit frequency for small quantity generator sites will open up time and resources for more frequent surveillances of WIP site operations. We're also monitoring the repository siting annual report. This is a report that DOE must submit to us by the end of this calendar year, and they must show progress toward the siting of another repository in a state other than New Mexico. So we're hoping to get a draft of that soon so that we can take a look at that before we get a final submittal by the end of the year. And now I'm going to go over a shipment update, as usual. These are shipments for this calendar year, so from January 1st through September 9th of this year. So far, there have been 348 total shipments. As usual, Idaho National Laboratory is the biggest shipper currently with 253 of those shipments, followed by Savannah River Site that has 49 and Los Alamos with 34. And then 8 from Oak Ridge in Tennessee and 4 from Argonne National Lab in outside Chicago, Illinois. And Lawrence Livermore so far doesn't have any shipments so far this year, but we are expecting at least 1 to come in from Livermore in California. And that concludes the NMED update on WIP. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Any questions on that? Beverly?
I have 2 questions. On WIP, you mentioned that you're working on a definition for legacy waste. Is there an issue accepting newly generated waste at WIP?
No, there's not an issue. WIP has to meet, it has to be defense-generated waste. It has to meet the WIP waste acceptance criteria. So newly generated waste is allowed. However, during renewal, we felt it was important to prioritize legacy waste and especially waste from New Mexico generator storage sites, Lanel and Sandia. And so we added this new permit condition to try to prioritize that. And the end goal of that is to prioritize disposal of this legacy waste in panel 12, one of the 2 new panels.
Thank you. And my second question was about the explosives. You mentioned that, they are investigating alternative treatments. Can you give us a high level of what that is? What is an alternative treatment for high explosives?
Yes. So there are different technologies that can be used instead of just using a open burn pit for disposal where it will incinerate in an open way, giving off air vapors and potential for detonation, which might kick out undetonated munitions. So those are some of the hazards with open burn, open detonation, along with having constituents released to the subsurface. Some alternatives, and I'm not up on all of them that are going on, but some that have been looked at are closed. It's almost like a kind of a closed box for incineration. So it's an encapsulated incineration with a filtrated systems for any vapors or anything that might come off doesn't just get let out to the environment through the air pathway. So it's more of an encapsulated incineration and detonation of it. But there are other technologies that are being looked at.
Won't the encapsulation blow up if you?
No, it's engineered for not to do that, yes. No, that's a great question.
Thank you.
I believe, Mark, you were next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A couple of questions. One, regarding the new definition of legacy waste, if you could elaborate on why there's a change and what you think the draft might look like.
There's never been a definition of legacy waste in the permit, and there is conflicting views on how people term the word legacy throughout the complex, and that's one of the main things that they're finding is that different sites determine that word legacy in different ways. So what I expect to see is a breakout of what all the different sites, how they use the word legacy, and how much inventory of waste there is at these different sites for legacy waste, and a working definition of what legacy could be if we were to use it for our permit and to prioritize that waste for panel 12.
Thank you. Consistency is good. The other question related to the sites, I think I recall you saying there's a number of sites that are being considered outside of New Mexico. Could you elaborate on what sites are being looked at?
I have not seen a draft of the plan, and I don't know if that we are at that stage where they're actually looking at sites for a true waste repository that could take over for WIP once the Land Withdrawal Act is reached. I know consent-based siting has been looked at for high-level waste since Yucca Mountain is not a viable option at the moment. So I know they're looking at consent-based siting, DOE is, for high-level waste. I don't know about true waste. I'll be interested to see what a draft of this and what they've come up with.
We're all interested. Thank you for keeping us informed. This switches gears a little bit now, going back to the hexavalent chromium plume. I think I heard from John that now a couple, 3, 4 of the wells are now approved for injection. And if that is true, I wondered if you could explain a little bit about how that works. Is all the water being pumped going through those selected wells? And how does that affect the hydro wall that's supposedly keeping everything at bay from migrating into the Pueblo?
Okay. So the 3 injection wells, pretty much the wells that would be used for extraction, there would be a balance that would be maintained for extraction, treatment, and then reinjection, just to keep the dynamics of the groundwater plume controlled. And basically the injection would be from within the plume boundary treatment, and then reinjection in these 3 injection well locations that are located to the southern portion of the plume. That injection back into the plume would create a increased head pressure, which would essentially stop the natural groundwater flow to the southeast that would be going onto the Pueblo land. So that injection there would actually be beneficial for creating a kind of hydro barrier. Basically, it's an increased head flow, head pressure that will allow, that will kind of prevent the water from naturally flowing to the south. So that would be to prevent any further migration of the chromium plume. Does that answer your question?
It does, except for I'm trying to get my head around if you're pushing on water with this head pressure, how do we know it's not going sideways?
The monitoring network, there are some down gradient wells, and that's one thing that we are working with DOE is to get additional monitoring wells to be able to track and detect any redirection of that groundwater flow. So yes, it is a great question on that. So the primary concern is to make sure that we are not having any contamination flow to the south onto the Pueblo land. Secondary would be the lateral flow that you mentioned, which is still on Llano land, but in an area where we should be able to install additional monitoring wells and potentially look at further extraction wells to basically capture that whole plume area and also be able to define the extent of the plume itself.
That answers my question. Thank you. That's all I have.
Okay, before we move on with the questions, we've had another guest join us today. Ellie, could you please introduce yourself?
Good afternoon, everyone. My apologies for being a little tardy. Traffic was a little worse than anticipated. So my name is Elizabeth Gilbertson. I am the Deputy Manager at the EMLA Los Alamos Field Office, and it is a pleasure to join you this afternoon.
Thank you. And Eleanor, I believe you were next.
Thank you. I have 3 questions too about WIP. Can you tell me what Class 2 means?
Sure. Class RCRA, the Resource Conservation and Recovery Act regulations, have different classes of permit modifications depending on the complexity of the modification. Class 1 are minor, the most simple ones, and then Class 2 is the next step up. The main thing about Class 2 is that they have strict timelines. They're put in place so that the the permitted facility can make changes swiftly if needed to keep their permit updated with changing conditions at the facility or changing regulations. Usually they have to be done in 90 days, processed by the regulator, or 120 days if the regulator requests an extension. For this one in June, we processed it in 90 days, and the Class 2s are kind of moderate as far as complexity goes. Examples would be if they're changing the number of monitoring wells, or when they put in the new filter building for WIP, that was a Class 2. So those are some examples of Class 2 modifications. And then the next step up is Class 3, and those are really involved. There's a chance to request a public hearing. They're quite complex. We usually get our technical contractor involved to look at different aspects of it.
Thank you. Thank
You're
you. So you mentioned risk-based analysis. Are those done internally, or is that done by an outside entity?
It's done by the QA, the Quality Assurance program at CBFO down in Carlsbad, the Department of Energy. And they have spreadsheets basically that have a bunch of different risk-based analyses that they're looking at, different criteria they're looking at. For example, if the contractor has changed, if different waste streams are being managed, if they have different containers that they might be using, any kind of different approaches that they might have that would up the risk and would qualify them to have an audit on an annual basis. So, like the big sites like Los Alamos and Advanced Mixed Waste Treatment Project, which is the big shipper up in Idaho, those will continue to have annual audits. But then places like Livermore, probably Argonne, if they can present a risk-based analysis to us for why it's not necessary to have those every year, then we'll consider approving those on a biannual basis.
Thank you. My next question is not directly about WIP, but we had several earthquakes near where I live, 2.5. My neighbors are asking me, is this more than normal? Is this a result of injection wells? What do I tell them?
There are earthquakes as a result of injection wells. They're quite low energy in the area, and they're mostly surface earthquakes. So the earthquakes in the area aren't reaching the repository level. That's one thing. And then also the WIP facility is designed based on its design basis is based on an earthquake that's the maximum ever seen in the Permian Basin, which is above 6. So these are much lower energy, and they're on the surface. But as I said, the facility is designed to withstand an earthquake that's in the 6th level or above. So workers would be safe, and then those earthquakes aren't reaching the repository level.
Are we having more earthquakes than we typically have?
I think that there are more low energy earthquakes in the area. I can't speak to that authoritatively, but I think that that trend is true from injection wells. And to combat or to keep an eye on that, that's another renewal permit condition that we added, is that the permittees have to every year now give us a record of new saltwater disposal wells and oil and gas wells that are being put in around the facility's perimeter around the land withdrawal act area. Thank you. You're welcome.
If I may add to that, interesting question, and we've been hearing that a lot more often. Yeah, so I would say I'd recommend maybe letting the WIP presenter know maybe for the next cab, or I guess I'm hearing that you guys are going to go down to Carlsbad? Not anymore. Not anymore. Okay, well, next time, because we recently were at another meeting with EPA, and they really got into that question. It was really interesting. So I do think it's worth seeking a detailed information presentation even on that question, because it is on a lot of people's minds. So
I would appreciate that. And actually, John, it was not far from where you live.
Yes. So we can help relay that information to the WIP folks as well, right? That people are interested to learn more about it. So thank you.
Joseph, hold for just 1 minute. We've had several other folks join us online. Danielle Duran, could you introduce yourself? Are you with us?
I am. I'm having a little trouble with the controls. I'm Danielle Duran. I'm the Intergovernmental Affairs Manager for Los Alamos County, and I'm really excited to be part of the CAB. Thank you.
Thank you. We also have a representative from Teresa Fernandez's office, Mr. Matt Miller. Are you with us, sir?
Yes, sir. Good afternoon, everyone. Matt Miller with the Congresswoman's office in Santa Fe. I'm her Director of Outreach. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. And with that, Joseph, the floor is yours, sir.
Mr. Vice Chair, Madam Megan, just a question, real short. You mentioned that the DOE Community Forum is going to have 3 per year. And the next one is in Las Vegas on October 24th. Is there any consideration of having these DOE community forums for any of our 23 sovereign nations, tribal nations here in New Mexico?
That's a great question. I can bring that to them and suggest that. I know that during negotiations, they added, they looked at their community relations plan to see if they were getting enough outreach for tribal communities and did a class 1 modification to across the board make sure that they're looking at better outreach for tribal communities. That's a great idea for one of the forums, and I'm going to bring that up with them.
Thank you so much for the answer. Excellent answer, by the way. I'm really concerned about that because we understand, our tribal nations do understand that this is New Mexico is a nuclear industry-driven state. And there's a lot of things going on in our state involving the nuclear industry that we feel, I don't speak for the tribal nations, I speak for my tribal nation because of the sovereignty issue. But we definitely, it's the self-determination issue that we're concerned for. And this WIP project or anything that has to do with the nuclear industry, we want to be involved. It's a tribal collaboration, the consultation, especially on the state level, that was passed in 2009 by our former governor, Bill Richardson. You put something in writing, the state legislature signs off on it, approves it, the governor signs it, put it to action. And that's what I'm asking. I appreciate it. Thank you. Mr. Chair, or Vice Chair, thank you.
With regard to the permitting of the explosives work, does that include RDX?
If that's a great question. If it's more of burning and disposal of located and found munitions themselves, if they do happen to contain RDX chemical, that would be included with that, yes. But are you referring to the RDX groundwater plume itself or just the chemical itself?
Just the chemical itself.
Okay.
Because this board was told last year that a scientist involved in the development of RDX in the UK came to Los Alamos and visited the site where RDX is deposited. And what I heard him say to this board when asked, what do you think we should do with this stuff? He said, don't touch it. And so that's the basis of my question.
Oh, okay. So that would
touch
be,
it?
well, that's also talking about storage, and I'm not up on the actual portion of the RDX being stored itself, but that storage would not be part of an open burn, open detonation for disposal.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that is two
Okay.
separate things.
Okay.
This is more looking at munitions that pose a hazard in themselves by being unstable or need to be disposed of to demilitarize them.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.
And my second question, Megan, is who are the permittees you were referring to?
The permittees for WIP are the Department of Energy and their management and operating contractor, SIMCO, which is Salado Isolation Mining Contractors, Inc. I think Ryan Flynn's going to be here for this afternoon for them.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And we have one question from a board member online. Stephen?
Yes, this goes back to the question of the injection wells for the plume. I assume that at some point when the injection wells stop injecting, that the water pressure will drop, and then if there was any plume left, it would continue to migrate southeast. Does that mean that the process has to be ongoing until the extraction wells show that there is no chromium in the water? And if that's the case, do you have an estimate for how long that process is going to take?
Yes. So that would be more on the remedial process. What's being done now is an interim measure to slow down or stop the migration to the south onto the Pueblo land. If that is the remedial treatment selected, once we get to that point, then yes, it would be a extraction of contaminated water, re-injection of clean water to get a conveyor belt. So you would have extraction of contamination, process and cleaning, and then re-injection back in to get the contamination to essentially be remediated. The investigation phase is still ongoing. We're still trying to identify and determine where all of the contributing locations are. The geology is very technical in the area because of the basalts and the tuff that the release had to go through. So that's one of the variables that's being worked out and being looked at through the investigation. But yes, the process itself, essentially from a top level, would be extract out where contamination is within the heart of the plume and also within the front leading edge, re-injection to keep the contamination migrating, kind of pushing itself towards those extraction wells, and then cleanup would be determined once it's identified through monitoring wells and everything that groundwater has been relieved of that contaminant.
A follow-up, Mr. Chairman. I assume that means that you're talking not about a zero contamination, but something below an acceptable level, and if so, what's the level?
JD, if you don't mind, it's
Yes.
Caitlin Martinez here. I'm going to go ahead and just give you a little assist here. I'm the acting Lano Group Manager with Hazardous Waste Bureau, and just to provide a little bit of kind of clarification, our proposal in these letters that JD was talking about for this partial operation of injection was really just to facilitate the restart of some kind of treatment of the hexavalent chromium plume and some kind of active extraction, because that's where we feel we are gaining the most success in hydraulic control under this current interim measures. So that's kind of what our proposal was, and to the best of the data we have available, we selected the southern boundary wells, which show, I think, more success, as the whole team would agree, in the injection and extraction portion of that. But what we're doing here is, under interim measures, our whole intention really is just to suppress the migration of this contamination plume and keep it within the furthest bounds of its current extent of contamination. And as we've had this year of no extraction and no injection, we're seeing that there's a potential for that furthest extent of contamination to extend beyond its current boundary. So we're looking to facilitate restart of some type of treatment as soon as possible. And, the independent technical review is providing recommendations on long-term remediation steps for the plume. But for right now, the state is focused on let's do action, some type of extraction and some type of control is better than nothing. And let's move forward and modify the interim measures as we evaluate and continue to look at concentration data and injection data under that. Hopefully that helps.
Thanks, Caitlin.
Yes, it does help. But I'm assuming we all would agree that there's no way to extract all of the chromium. So is there some safe level that we're targeting?
We go to the groundwater quality standard, and that's 50 parts per billion for hexavalent chromium here. So that's what our cleanup standard will be. We'll want it below the groundwater contamination standard.
Got it. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Mark, you have another question?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I do. There was a reference just given about this independent review, and I believe that, I can't remember if it was Savannah, but some external expertise in the area came to look at it. What is the status, and do you have a date for the report?
They are in the final review process of that. They're summarizing their results and their recommendations. I don't have an exact date of when they're going to be submitting that, but they said it was going to be coming to us pretty soon. So once we are able to get that review with DOE, we should be able to present the findings of that to the public.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any second thoughts? Should we let them off the hook?
Mr. Chairman, one second thought. This is Steve.
Okay.
I have an odd question. Would the approach to the chromium plume be different if the Pueblo boundary was another 50 miles further east?
No, I think the speed in which we implemented in interim measures might have been a little bit different, but I think if we're talking as far as overall, treatment, this pump and treat technology that we're utilizing under the interim measures, I don't think the core concept of that would be different. I think it would just be the timeline that we accelerated implementation and development of those injection and extraction wells might have been a bit different.
Well, my thought would have been that maybe if there was greater space, some sort of natural dilution would have been achieved the same result at a lot less taxpayer cost.
I know that's a portion that they evaluate, natural attenuation, and that's something when we do a remedial design and evaluation, that's a component that will be considered.
Also, Elle wants to add some context to that as well.
Yeah, just from the department's perspective, the answer is no. It would not change the expedience in which we would address the situation because the contaminant leaving the lab boundary is still impacting someone. Even if it's not impacting the Pueblo population, it would be impacting the local community of Los Alamos. We can't allow that regardless of who is being impacted. So from the department's perspective, doesn't matter who my receptor is, I'm going to take care of that receptor.
Thank you, Ellie.
That's it, going twice. Thank you all. We'll move on. We do have a bit of a change. Ellie is going to begin by giving us an update on the consent order.
Great, thank you. All right, everyone, like I mentioned, it is a pleasure to be here today. My name is Ellie Gilbertson. For those of you who've just joined, I am the deputy manager at the Los Alamos field office. I know that there has been information shared in the media surrounding the settlement agreement between the Department of Energy and NNMCAB. And so EMLA wanted to provide the Citizens Advisory Board with an update. there's a lot of information here. So I am absolutely happy to answer any questions that the Citizens Advisory Board members have, but I would ask please wait till the end of the presentation to ask those questions because there's a lot here. All right, and I'm asked to click. Let's see if I can get that. Yay. Apologies, I am terrible with technology, so you're probably going to see me talking to this clicker a little bit throughout the presentation. All right, so for our first slide here, on August 30th, the United States Department of Energy and the New Mexico Environmental Division did execute a settlement agreement. This settlement agreement does resolve litigation regarding the 2016 compliance order. And it is the principal regulatory document that governs the legacy cleanup at Los Alamos National Lab at LANL. This document, this agreement does involve revisions to the consent order, but just for clarity, it does not supersede the 2016 consent order. So we've clarified it does not supersede. It includes penalties, I'm sorry, not penalties, forgive me. It has been a long day. It includes a $333,000 payment to the Hazardous Waste Emergency Fund, and it requires NMED to complete its review of the 221 certificates of completion within a year of execution of the revised consent order. There is an existing backlog of COCs and requests that EMLA has submitted to NMED for review. The intent is, the intended compromise this is intended to compromise disputed claims. It does not constitute and shall not be construed in any admission of wrongdoing, noncompliance, or liability, which we feel is a very key statement there. And then finally, the settlement agreement and the revised 2016 consent order can be found. There's a link there. We will make that available to those of you online. And it's also available on DOE EMLA's website under our information center. Go to 2016 consent order. You can view that settlement agreement on our website, as well as the summary of changes that occurred between the 2016 consent order and these revisions. All right, let's dive into what these major changes are. So again, this is an overview of the major changes. We're not going to get into all of the nuanced, subtle details, but there were some big differences here that we wanted to draw your attention to. So the first set of major changes, probably the most significant changes, occur in Section 8, which is campaign, 5-year schedules, and annual planning process. So these changes establish a process for setting campaign completion dates for each campaign and clarifies the process for prioritizing campaigns. So within the changes, campaigns are going to be divided into two classes, Class A campaigns and Class B campaigns. Whether a campaign is Class A or Class B depends on whether there is currently enough information regarding the remedy for that campaign. It does not refer to any prioritization. So Class B does not make it a less priority. It just may have less information available. So Class A campaigns are campaigns that do have sufficient clarity that we can establish a 5-year schedule. DOE and NMED jointly established the milestones for the upcoming fiscal year as well as the following fiscal year. So two fiscal years, not just the one. And the campaign completion dates, which may be beyond a 5-year schedule. And then DOE is subject to stipulated penalties for missing milestone and campaign completion dates. Class B campaigns are those where we just don't have the same level of information. It's too uncertain to establish those completion dates. It doesn't change our priority. It means we're still gaining the information necessary to carry that action out. DOE and NMED establish the milestones for the upcoming fiscal year, as well as some non-binding targets, because again, these are less certain. It's more difficult to plan to for the following 2 fiscal years. And again, DOE is subject to stipulated penalties for missed milestones. All right, section 11, our next major section for changes to the consent order. So section 11 is deferred sites. So deferred sites are specifically 4 circumstances in which a site may be deferred. The first is that it's located within a testing hazard zone of an active firing site at LANL. So we have a number of cleanup operations that are still currently being used by NNSA. It's a unique location in that this is not a closure site for EM where NNSA is out of the way. NNSA is still there. They're still utilizing the space, and so we have to accommodate for that mission, which is a good segue into the second circumstances that the location is associated with active LANL operations. Again, they are still operating on this location. We can't make the schedules just as it's convenient to just us. It also may be inaccessible due to land access issues. So an example here would be if that there is a cleanup location a business is built on top of it. Right? I'm not going to ask that business owner to tear down their business so that I can go in and clean that up. We will defer the cleanup to when we are able to access that particular land parcel. Or the fourth reason would be any other reason that is not addressed within these 3 circumstances that is jointly agreed. It would be subject to NMED approval. For sites that are deferred for active firing sites or facility operations, DOE must provide notice to NMED as well as confer with the neighboring pueblos and local governments, as well as notify the public. And then finally on this slide, we see that DOE will provide an annual report on the status of all deferred sites. So revisions in this section clarify under what circumstances a site may be deferred. That's the chief change in this section. It also includes additional engagement that is to occur prior to deferring a site, so more public notifications. Finally, it provides for an annual reporting to NMED explaining what actions have been undertaken to remove, or rather to move each solid waste management unit. Sometimes you'll hear us call that a SHMU, because that's a fun word to say, or an area of concern out of a deferred status. So again, we don't want to keep things deferred. We want to move on them, and as soon as we're able to do that, we notify NMED. And incidentally, if you have a copy of the revised consent order, section 11 is on pages 41 through 45 of the revised consent order. All right, let's move on to the next section of change. All right, so section 23, this really, if I were to summarize in a nutshell what our changes were here, it is that these changes enhance the efficiency of the review process. So section 23 is preparation, review, and comment on documents. The first cardinal change here is changes regarding the document review times to conform with the applicable provisions of pertinent NMED regulations. So the New Mexico Administrative Code establishes the times in which NMED is to review these types of documents. And so these changes bring us more into alignment with what those guidelines and requirements are. The second is that it clarifies the timelines by when NMED is to complete the review of the documents. And it is critical because if you all will recall a previous presentation we provided, where we broke out how you get from point A to point B, and we have NMED review smack dab in the middle of that, right? So it is critical that the review occur within a timely manner so that EMLA can both timely and effectively plan as well as expeditiously execute the legacy waste cleanup. And then we've included the Appendix D here, which specifies which documents are subject to NMED approval and document review times. And it also includes a table of review times that kind of outlines the days that these are to be reviewed by. So again, just if you happen to have the revised consent order out because you're reading it, making notes, section 23 is on pages 60 through 66 of that document. All right, slide 6, section 25, which is dispute resolution. The revisions in here this streamlines the process for technical disputes between DOE and NMED. And this is important because it's going to help us get matters resolved quickly, and we're not letting them languish. We are seeing a very good benefit with the independent technical review team, and this process effectively institutionalizes that benefit. So for technical disputes, the parties will use an expert to resolve the dispute. The expert is jointly agreed upon by the parties, and the costs are shared equally among the parties so that we both have a vested interest in the success of the outcome. The expert's decision is final and binding on the parties. That is a change here. And the expert is to resolve the dispute within 60 days of the appointment. So again, the intent is to get us an expeditious resolution. And you can see there's a similar structure for non-technical disputes that is less binding in nature because this is technical versus non-technical. So again, if you're following along, these are pages 67 through 71 of the revised consent order. The next slide is for section 34, and this is an interesting change in that this is a completely new section to the consent order. This section articulates expectations for public participation, Pueblo and local government, conferrals, independent audits, and in general engagement. It identifies public participation opportunities, and this provision in a single location, but there are numerous opportunities that exist for public engagement in the consent order itself. Many of these were already in the 2016 consent order, and you can see we have indicated a check mark on our list for those that are already there, we are already doing, and the ones that are bulleted are the ones that are introduced with this change. So again, this is pages 79 through 81 of the revised consent order, and also calls out some stuff in Appendix G if you want to take a look at that. All right, slide 8, section 36. This slide discusses the stipulated penalties, and we've kind of alluded to some of this in the previous discussions that where those may be applied, but we are articulating them here. So missed milestones are subject to stipulated penalties. Missed campaign completion dates are subject to stipulated penalties. And when a milestone is extended beyond the fiscal year, it does not cease to become a milestone. So this is a change to the way that this is currently operating when I might have an annual fiscal milestone, but if I miss it, it does not carry into the next fiscal year. Prior to the revision, that was the case. DOE and NMED felt that there should either be a substitute milestone for the ones that are missed, or that
that the extended milestone should remain subject to stipulated penalties. So given that milestones, they, one, represent not only a portion of the corrective action activities for a given campaign, two, they're intended to demonstrate progress on a campaign, three, they provide an accountability mechanism in the event that they are not met by a certain date, and four, they do not constitute all of the deliverables that are submitted by DOE for a campaign. So this was a jointly agreed upon accountability measure. And you can check out pages 83 through 87 if you want to see in more detail. So that, in a nutshell, summarizes the more substantial, the major changes of the consent order. I know we do still have a few minutes remaining, and so I would love to entertain any questions that the Citizens Advisory Board may have.
I'm sorry, I didn't see who went first. Joseph?
Vice Chair. Madam Miller. On page 4, the one where you talk about for sites deferred for active firing sites or facilities operations.
Yes, sir.
It talks about DOE must provide notice to NNMCAB, confer with neighboring pueblos and local governments and notify public. How would that be accomplished?
So we have several existing mechanisms now that we would likely use. So we have the consultation process that we utilize to engage and consult with neighboring pueblos, and that is not specific to deferred sites. That's for any issue. We have a process for a government-to-government engagement with the neighboring pueblos. Similarly, we do have regular communications and discussions with the Los Alamos County, which would be a neighboring government, because they're also impacted. And so those would be a few examples of mechanisms we would take advantage of in order to have those kind of conversations. For notifications to NMED, we have a healthy letter writing relationship right now. I don't think anybody would question our letter writing capabilities. And so that would be one mechanism. We also have a means of communicating with one another called the Designated Authorizing Manager. And so the state has a Designated Authorizing Manager and the department does. Those two get together and discuss issues and make agreements on behalf of each agency as well, within the constraints of what they're chartered with. They can't, they don't have a full blank check here. But yeah, we have a number of means that we can communicate with one another and make these discussions and these questions known.
Well, thank you for that good answer. On page 7, it's not a question, but kudos. When it talks about distinguish public meetings from Pueblo and local government conferrals, that is what is a plus when we talk about cultural competency, cultural sensitivity, because when within the communities of the tribal nations across the country, our tribal nation, for example, doesn't consider ourselves as stakeholders.
Right.
We find that term stakeholders, we're not a business.
Right.
We are a sovereign nation. And so to see that in written form, kudos. And I appreciate that. Our tribal nation does appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Madam?
Thank you. Mark, I believe you were next, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I had a question regarding the annual reporting. For years, we've been, as a CAB, asking for a form of chart that would pictorially show where we are with each of the campaigns, what was spent, how long they've worked on it, and when they'd be complete. So I guess 2 questions is there was some talk about an interactive map on a website. So I wanted to know if that was available. And then secondly, is there a Gantt chart contemplated for the annual report?
So in terms of let me address the website first. Work on the website is still ongoing. And I believe that will be available to the public within the next, if not this fiscal year. By this fiscal year, I mean FY25, by the way, not 24, because there's only like 4 days left on FY24. So not happening in FY24. But if not FY25, then FY26, just because software development and release of information. So that one's a little bit easier for me to answer. In terms of the annual reporting, there's, to my knowledge, and my team can certainly correct me if I'm incorrect here, there's no effort to put a Gantt chart in that annual reporting as of right now. There's a lot that goes into the planning of this. Some of it is business sensitive and has to do with how our contractor handles their business systems, and so we could not release some of that planning strategies to the public. But similarly, as we discussed on some of the deferred site slides, a lot of the planning assumptions are very dependent on the information we know at the moment. And as we continue to gain additional information about the nature and extent of a particular SHMU or AOC, that then requires my buddy Troy over here to engage in replanning. And so any Gantt chart I give you, it ages like milk. It'll expire very quickly, because as we're continuing to gain this additional information, we're continuing to replan, and that changes a lot of things. It also changes a lot of the priorities in terms of what funding is available across various fiscal years. That changes how we go about execution. So anyway, broadly speaking, I do not believe there are any plans to include a Gantt chart level planning, particularly anything with like resource loading or financials attached to that.
I have two other questions on two different topics. One is the concept of going to a mediator for things that are under the consent order going forward. Question is hexavalent chromium. There's a third-party expert now reviewing it. Is that subject to mediation?
Sorry, my thingy turned off. Is the current technical report subject to mediation? Is that what you're asking?
It's more general than that. The whole concept of the campaign for the hexavalent chromium, is that under the consent order as currently modified, which includes a mediation if there's a dispute?
Yes.
Okay.
The current independent technical review is not, because that was initiated prior to these revisions going into effect. But you're going to see a lot of similarities there, because these negotiations were occurring while we were initiating the independent technical review. So I would say that the current independent technical review is not at all inconsistent with these revisions, but it does not fall under it because of when it went into effect, when each mutually went into effect.
The last question I had was regarding the 10-year review. If I understand on my read of the consent order as modified, there's not a date when it happens, but there is an anticipated 10-year review of the consent order continually until everything's clean. Do you know when that will take place, and how will it take place? Will it be in the last one was in the courtroom setting. This one seems to be outside of it. What are your thoughts?
So, we put the 10-year date in there just because I believe the intent of both parties is to continually evaluate this. But as you've historically noted, we've already revised this a couple times, and neither time occurred at a 10-year mark. So the consent order can be modified at any time if both DOE and NMED, so the and is important, not an or, and if we both agree to those modifications. And so the modifications, actually, if you check out section 33, that discusses and describes the modification process.
Thank you.
Beverly, you're next, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have two questions. The consent order has stipulated penalties if DOE misses milestones. My question is, what penalty is there to the state if they don't review the documents that are specified, on a schedule, or the certificates of completion that require short turnaround? So what incentivize or what penalty is there to the state?
So that's a good question. As a matter of fact, that is an aspect of the revisions, is that NMED can, if the review deadlines are not accomplished within the appropriate timeframes, there's two paths forward. The first path forward is that NMED can request an extension of the state of New Mexico. And so the state of New Mexico can come on voice and say, yes, there is a legitimate, good explanation for why this deadline wasn't met. It can't just be, I didn't get to it, right? It has to be a good explanation. And that can be approved. So you can get an additional 30 days, let's say, on your 60-day review. And so an example might be staffing levels. We had inadequate staffing to accomplish this review within this amount of time. We need an additional 30 days. So if you have a legitimate, good reason, the state can approve that extension. But those aren't indefinite. You can't keep adding the extension on there. And so after a certain amount of time, again, this is all articulated in the consent order, then what happens is a credit gets put to the department to be used against any potential future stipulated penalties. So hypothetically, let's say I had a stipulated penalty, however, there was, I'm going to make numbers up. Let's say I have a stipulated penalty of $100, as if that would ever be the dollar amount, but that due to the backlog of review times, I have a $50 credit. My stipulated penalty now reduces to $50 from the $100. So that's the accountability measure that is applied to the state within the updated revisions.
Thank you. My other question is about the RDX plume, which I don't know very much about, but is it located by an active firing site, and does that make it a deferred site?
So qualitatively, it's in that vicinity, but there's not an active firing site on top of it, no. So now, I don't think we've really gone into the discussion specifically to where the RDX plume is located relative to where the firing sites are to really give you more detail than that. The RDX plume is in the weapons area, and it is near geographically the active firing sites. In fact, I believe that TA9 does border one of those firing sites, but I would have to look at a map to get you the exact answer. Does that qualify as a deferred site? I need to get with my staff to get you a very detailed answer there, but I can tell you I don't believe we've discussed that as a deferred site as of today. That doesn't mean we won't, we haven't as of yet.
Sorry, Eleanor.
Thank you. Thank you. I actually was going to ask about the stipulated penalties, and I assume the stipulators are DOE and NMED.
Well, the penalty gets levied to the department for missing expected cleanup milestones.
So who does the levying?
So we pay that to, I'm going to need to phone a friend. Cheryl, you're on. I don't know the details.
I mean, who's in charge of this particular aspect?
So once NMED provides us with a stipulated penalty, that comes to us in writing. We have a certain amount of time to pay that penalty, as well as remediate anything that led up to the penalty. So let's say that sometimes a penalty can continue to grow with each increment of time that it exceeds. So it might be for every week that you have this condition, it doubles, or for every day you get X amount more. So it's not just about a financial.
But it's always monetary, right?
The stipulated penalty is monetary, correct.
And who decides how much this penalty? I'm interested in accountability. And, and really I want to address my fellow board members with this. I'm feeling a little frustration because I really acknowledge that you professionals are doing a good job of cleaning up, but there are still bad things happening. And I am wondering if we as a board can have something to say about, you may all know about this story of the community that lived by the river, and they're looking in the river and babies are floating down the river. So they're jumping in the river and they're saving these babies. And finally someone in the community says, we need to go upstream and find out why the babies are being thrown into the river. I am wondering if we as a board have in our mandate and in our power to inflict penalties so that we can not have to have this job for the rest of our lives and the rest of our children's lives.
So the Citizens Advisory Board does not have that authority. I can tell you that.
Yeah.
The point of the advisory board is to advise the Department of Energy. In terms of who determines what those stipulated penalties are, they are jointly agreed to, and I believe that they are articulated in the settlement agreement, but I will, again, I'm trying to phone a friend here and they're not
They're not helping you out, are they?
And Kayla Martinez with NMED, the stipulated penalties are part of our New Mexico Administrative Code, so we cite those, and if DOE were to miss a milestone deadline, we would send a notification of intent to assess a stipulated penalty, and then we would move forward with that process. So we just use NMAC for amounts and assess that as needed. And like Ellie said, we would give notice on how that stipulated penalty would build until the submittal. Hopefully that helps.
It helps a little. I would just like to say that, I have no idea how you compute what the penalties are, but in my opinion, a law, a rule that has no penalty or a minimal penalty is merely a suggestion.
Agreed. And there are several accountability mechanisms that apply directly to the department in the event that we do not accomplish a milestone. I will note, our cleanup contractor is highly successful at accomplishing the milestones in the consent order. It is one of the areas in which their performance excels. And so this is not something that comes up frequently. In fact, it's a very rare occurrence that we miss a milestone.
To add in there, just specifically with the aggregate areas, that cleanup has been really successful and has been progressing over the last several years. So, but with that, like Caitlin has said, we have an administrative code that outlines what those fees and penalties would be. And, we are constantly working and looking at those schedules to make sure that, everything is being met and that, they're bringing to the table as they need to be. And like I said, for especially for like the aggregate areas, that has been actually a very successful portion of the cleanup.
Thank you.
If I can expand
sure.
something, because you did mention that waste is continuing to enter the environment. That is a true statement, but it is far less than it used to be. And I will also, just for clarification, environmental management's task is the legacy waste.
Right.
So new legacy waste is not entering
I get that.
The environment.
Christy, thank you for waiting. The floor is yours.
Yes, thank you. So as a new board member, forgive me if I don't have some of the historical context for the question I'm about to ask. But on page 2 of the presentation, the bullet point that requires NMED to complete a review of 221 certificates of completion, with regard to that number, is that, to me, that seems high, like there's a backlog of this. Is that a true assumption? And if so, is it because of staffing, technical issues around that certificate of completion? Just some context for that number.
Those 221 are the backlog. Those are the certificates of completion that the department needs in order to take the next step into executing the cleanup. Correct.
Yeah, and just to add on to that, NMED, my department as well, has been working really hard to bring on new staff, bring on additional staff to try and address that and be able to catch that up. It's one reason that it is included in the consent order. We are working for that. The certificates of completion are a DOE-specific item, so they can show that they're making progress and moving forward. NMED under RCRA does work under a corrective action complete, which is a finalization of completion and certification that that site, individual site, has been cleaned up. So they are two separate things, but there is importance for making sure that DOE is able to get their certificates done so they can also show up to their higher up that they are making progress.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Eleanor. Okay, do we have any other questions then? Ellie, well done, thank you.
Thank you, and I will be here for the break and public comment, so if you have any sidebar questions or anything or clarification you'd like to ask offline, happy to provide that.
Okay, with that, we'll move on to the EMLA update from Cheryl. Are you there?
Yeah, hello, I'm here. Can you hear me? I think so. People looked up. Okay. Yeah, hi, I'm Cheryl Rodriguez. I'm with, I work under Ellie. I'm the director for the Office of Cleanup Execution, sorry. And so basically, Troy and I are just going to be giving you an update on various projects that we have going on this year. I think my update is getting less because you guys have done had a lot of good questions and conversation already. But I wanted to take the opportunity to let you know that one of the wells that we put in this year for chromium, we actually completed it just last week. So, and this is also meeting one of the milestones that we have for this year. So it's pretty exciting that we have completed this well. And we had a lot of support through NMED and Office of State Engineers. So I think that's really good news. I can give you more information on that if you'd like. My other topic was just going to be the independent technical review report. JD already said that it's coming out soon, and hopefully soon is possibly this afternoon, if not tomorrow. So that'll be awesome. We plan to do a 30 to 45-day review of that factual accuracy, at which point, if we have questions for the team members, then we'll put our questions forward in NMED or us, and then have some dialogue with the team members. And then based on that dialogue and the changes, if any are needed, then the team will go back and finalize and then issue the report. So all of that should be done by the end of this calendar year. So it's exciting that this is coming to an end. I think the team members were excellent. I was very impressed with the knowledge and experience they brought to this whole review. So I'm very much looking forward to the report. But like I said, you all had already lots of discussion on those various things. But and I had a really short update, and I'm just going to hand it over to Troy, unless there's, we'll wait for questions till Troy's done. But anyway, sorry I couldn't be there, but thank you.
Okay, do we have any questions of Cheryl? We have one question online, that was if the bike was for sale.
I know, right? No.
Okay, thank you. Troy, then it'll be, give us the update on N3B.
Yes, thank you. For those of you who joined online a little later, I'm Troy Thompson. I work for N3B, and I am the Environmental Remediation Program Manager. I can give you a little bit of an update on our aggregate areas and where we're at on that. JD had just mentioned some of the work we're doing there. We did discuss some of this at an earlier CAB meeting in July, but as we wrap up the fiscal year, it's a great time to give you an update on that. As a reminder, we have 3 overlapping work areas that we emphasize on the cleanup contract. That is protect water quality, clean up the land, and ship waste off-site. Aggregate area touches all 3 of these areas, and I'll bring some of that up on how that interacts with those 3 areas we do. So first, probably a reminder on what an aggregate area is. It's a term that we use every day in the work that we do. But it's really a consolidation of different drainages. So we've aggregated different watersheds into one area, and those form cleanup campaigns for what we're doing with the consent order. As we execute those campaigns, it's a way to get these areas off the books through our certificates of completion, and then ultimately some Class 3 permit mods that will happen with these areas. In these aggregate areas, they can be either fairly large or small. And it's any area where we've had a release of hazardous constituents, radiological constituents, or a potential release. It's not just if we know it happened. There was potential for it to be there. And we're going to go out and we're going to investigate that through soil sampling and identify areas that will need remediation as we hit these different aggregate areas. So, how does the program intersect all three of these? We're looking at soils here with the aggregate. So we're cleaning up the land in these aggregate areas as we identify where the remediation is needed. Water flows across these areas. As we get these areas cleaned up, we'll not need to do as extensive surface water monitoring in the future because we will have removed the contaminants from the areas. So we won't have to validate that we aren't getting migration across the site. And then also, as we do the remediation, we are generating some waste, predominantly a low-level waste, which is a radiological waste, but we can generate mixed low-level waste as well, which will have a hazardous component in it. So as we generate that waste, we're packaging it and we're getting it off the site. And that waste can come from our sample generation and also the remediation activities we do there. All this is good. It's reflecting on us getting the cleanup done. It's getting that waste off-site. It's also cleaning up the land and protecting that water quality for future generations. So it's all good work to keep advancing our environmental cleanup mission at Los Alamos. With that, we are also worked in 5 aggregate areas this summer. Those different ones, we'd have to get you a map out at some point. We've had them in the past, but it's a 2 Mile Canyon aggregate area, Petrillo and Fence Canyon aggregate area, Septermber and Upper Pajarito Canyon aggregate area, Chiquewi Canyon aggregate area, and Lower Pajarito aggregate area. Over the past 1.5 to 2 years, we've taken over 7,700 samples, right in that range, to work on characterization of these, and we will continue with some sampling in these areas and remediation in others. Moving into next year, planning remediation in Septermber and Upper Pajarito aggregate area and Chiquewi aggregate area as we move forward. So, as we go into these different areas, we're also utilizing lessons learned from different sites. We have to work with Triad on a daily basis at times for access into their areas. In NNSA, we are a tenant in those areas. Those are some of the areas we have to work through, as Ellie mentioned, as she talked about in the consent order side even. How do we get access? A lot of times on that, they have their mission going. Our access will involve going to work on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, when they may not have mission work going. We're working around their schedule as well as we get into these areas. Leads into some complex areas at times, but as long as we keep the dialogue going and have that open communication, we can advance that work scope and get it completed. All of those aggregate areas I mentioned will have consent order milestones tied to them. Some of them are progress reports. What did we get done this year? Some of them will be final investigation reports. We've wrapped up the sampling and remediation, and we're going to document that final report. When we've taken a lot of samples in these areas, these can be very large reports, but it's also showing and documenting the work that was done, sometimes over 2 to 3 years to complete some of these cleanups. So key that we not only have the plans that we execute, but we document it in the end. We did what we said we were going to do for the environmental cleanup. So what I'd end with on you is, cleaning up the land. It's both about protecting human health and the environment, but it's also that water quality protection that we'd mentioned before. It all plays in together as we get out there and characterize and remediate these areas. So quick update there. Take any questions for either Cheryl or I.
Beverly, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The mixed low-level waste that's generated as a result of cleanup activities, is that shipped off-site within a year? And if not, is it added to the landfill site treatment plan?
We do everything possible to not generate a waste that's going to be here over a year. If it's a mixed low-level waste, we're actually governed by the RCRA regulations for shipping that waste, and that will be shipped within a 90-day period, or it would have to go to a treatment, storage, and disposal facility, which we could get into at Area G at TA 54, GNL. We do not do that unless there are extenuating circumstances. We get that mixed waste off-site within 90 days. Low-level waste, it does have a year window for our radioactive waste management basis on that, but we are also looking to get that off as quickly as possible too. As we complete these activities, we want to get the waste off-site.
Mark?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Question has to do with cycling back to what's in the new modified consent order and the status of some of the campaigns. And I noticed that there's a list of appendices that does not seem to be complete. For instance, Appendix A, B, and C don't appear to be attached to the consent order that was circulated. What's the status of that, and when would we see those?
I'll field that one. Those appendices are being worked through to make sure that we both parties are in agreement to what those are laying out. Appendix A, I believe, and I'm screwing this one up, but Appendix A lists out the campaigns that currently are in that group. So that one's going to be, for the most part, mostly completed. We do have 30 days from the initial agreement to get all of those wrapped up and squared away. So we are working through that component to make sure that we have the components in the listings of those 3 appendices agreed to so we can move forward. Does that answer your question?
So the when is in 30 days?
The agreement to move forward on how we're doing things is being done. The signing is September 29th, I believe. And so those agreements in the framework will be set up so we can be able to move forward in agreement with those agreed upon deadlines and the campaigns themselves.
Okay, look forward to updates on the appendices. Thank you.
Will do.
Is that it, Mark?
Oh, yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions of Troy? Go ahead.
I do have one update to add. Yesterday, N3B retrieved the final corrugated metal pipe from above pit 29. So that was the last retrieval needed toward that campaign. We are aggressively working size reduction, and then we will have completed that. So that was an excellent accomplishment, and wanted to make sure we're sharing that as broadly as possible.
Congratulations.
Thank you. We are very proud of getting that last one out of the ground. And the way the week started with the rains, we weren't sure we were going to get there. We were that close, but weather dependent on when we were going to be able to get that last one out of the ground.
Great. Well then, thank you for your report, sir. Now then, who is?
Beverly on the end.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Beverly.
Could you tell us how much above ground waste was generated or will be generated as a result of the corrugated tube excavation?
So there are 158 corrugated metal pipes, and they're between 20 and 30 feet long. We size reduce those to approximately 4-foot segments, give or take, and then we place those segments in standard waste boxes. So, there's a good amount of math involved in that, but those containers are placed in. They haven't been certified by Carlsbad Characterization Project yet, but we package them compliantly so that they can be quickly certified and shipped off the hill as quickly as possible.
When you say certified, you mean as a waste stream?
These are already an existing waste stream.
Okay.
When I say certified, what I mean by that is before WIP can accept a container, we have to meet the WIP acceptance criteria. So you hear us say WIP whack all the time. It's as fun to say as schmooze. We have all sorts of fun acronyms, but WIP whack really just, what that means is that in addition to packaging regulations and NMED regulations, Carlsbad, to accept the waste, has imposed additional criteria upon us. And so we know what that criteria is, and we package so that we have high confidence that it will meet that. But they come up and they characterize to make sure that it will before they even load it onto the truck. Because if it doesn't, then we need to open it up, fix it, package it back up. They are only going to accept compliant waste at WIP.
So will that waste be certified after the existing above ground waste is certified, or at the same time, or how is that? When is that going to be disposed of at WIP?
We are coordinating with Carlsbad now to have them come up and certify that waste now. The way our priority goes is when we have that confidence that that waste meets what we believe to meet the WIP WAC, then we call Carlsbad and they come up. So it's not, there's no priority in terms of how long it's been above grade or how short it's been above grade, or it's when it's ready, then we go. Because we're not going to have a repeat of 2014. The department won't allow that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, this time are we really done? Okay. I've been given the golden envelope here, so we'll announce Patricia. Congratulations. Do you have any words for us?
Yes, I'm here. So did we get our results back?
You're the man.
All right, guys. I just want to give my thanks, many thanks to all the board members. And I'm looking forward to serving as your chair again here for the next year. And I would really like to see our consent order committees get back together. And I really want to see our chair and vice chairs for those consent order as well as other subcommittees be filled. And I'm really looking forward to another great year with y'all.
Thank you again.
Thank you, Vice Chair Manny.
With that, we will take a short break. Well, actually, fairly announce the vice chair. I won by default.
Here, you want to swing the gavel?
Yeah, I'll do that. So we'll take a short break till 3:30. Right, before we get started, our IT guys got some words of wisdom for us.
Turn them off.
Thank you. On the whip update.
Yes, turn his microphone.
Oh, my mic's on. Thank you. I need all the help I can get.
Pull that a little bit closer to you, Ryan.
Alrighty.
That's what the guy said.
Okay. Well, maybe I'll move closer to the mic. Well, again, thank you for having me here this afternoon. My name is Ryan Flynn. I'm the Vice President and ESH Program Manager for Salado Isolation Mining Contractors, or SIMCO. We're the managing and operations contractor for the WIP site. And joining me today is Amanda Trujillo. She is in our regulatory group, and she is a senior technical advisor in our environmental program. So I don't see my presentation up there yet. Awesome, thank you. Well, it's nice to come back. It's been a while since I've been able to present before this board, but I always enjoyed coming here, and I thought it was important to come in person because I think it's really important to get out and meet with people directly whenever possible. So again, thank you for having me here. I'm going to talk to you about the Waste Isolation Pilot Plant, or WIP, and obviously happy to answer any questions either during the presentation or at the end, whatever the preferences of the chair. But a little bit of background. WIP's mission is to safely characterize, transport, and ultimately dispose of the U.S.'s transuranic waste while protecting workers, the public, communities, tribal nations, and the environment. We are a one-of-a-kind facility, meaning we're the only geologic repository for transuranic waste. So that makes us very unique, very interesting, and I think one of the things that I was disappointed that we weren't able to actually bring you for a tour of the facility next month, but that's something that's really important to us. Is we think that's really critical to our role, being a one-of-a-kind facility with an important mission related to helping clean up legacy waste, transuranic waste. We think it's important to make sure we're educating members of the public, citizens, organizations, tribal nations. So we would absolutely love to be able to host you on site for a tour at some point in the future, because it's very different when you're actually 2,100 feet underground and really get to see the complexity of the operation and the passion of our workforce. I think it kind of gives you a much different impression of the facility. So some of our accomplishments is that we've had 22 sites now that have completed their true waste cleanup. We've received over 14,000 shipments, and we've traveled over 16.8 million miles safely through the transportation side of our operation. So far this year, we've received 361 shipments of waste in calendar year 24. So we're on progress to continue a pretty aggressive effort that we made last year, where we had our highest total shipment for the site in 10 years achieved last year, when we were able to receive 489 total shipments last year. So we're not quite on that pace this year, but we're still performing at a very high level. And just by way of orientation, well, I think we can talk about it a little later, but obviously we're in southeastern New Mexico. The facility is actually right on the county line between Eddy and Lee County. We're from the town of Carlsbad, the town of Hobbs. We're probably about 40 to 45 minutes to get from those towns actually to the site itself. So this is just a little bit about our team. We work for the U.S. Department of Energy, the Carlsbad Field Office, which you might hear me reference as CBFO. We work in partnership with a number of different entities, such as Lanel, Sandia, and different contractors that we work with. Really, safety and quality are part and parcel of any DOE operation, and certainly given the high hazard nature of our operations, that's something that we take very, very seriously. We're really proud of the fact that right now at the site, we have our best safety performance in 11 years. We're at the lowest total recordable injury rate for the site through the end of August that we've had in 11 years. And that rate, the total recordable injury rate, it's a metric that's used to help provide a comparison for different companies within different industries. And we're really proud of that work, but you can't ever get complacent because one bad day could change everything. But right now we've really been on a favorable trend. We've also had our strongest year in recent history in terms of our compliance record. Because we're a mine, we have quarterly inspections from the Mine Safety and Health Administration, or MSHA, and they come for an unannounced inspection every quarter, and they look at all aspects of our operation, and we get cited for any non-compliances. And this year we've had our strongest performance in the last 5 years with respect to our MSHA compliance record for this past year. So again, we don't say this because it's something that we can just declare a victory and move on. It's something that requires constant attention, but it's also something that I want to acknowledge because it doesn't happen without a ton of effort from all of our employees at every level of the organization. And they take quite a bit of pride in those types of records and performances, and I want to acknowledge them. So, as I mentioned, our mission is to dispose of true waste. And so WIP was created by a federal law called the Land Withdrawal Act, and it specifies that specifies what type of waste we're allowed to take, and we are allowed to accept defense-generated transuranic waste. And I think Ellie had mentioned earlier, as part of her presentation, the waste acceptance criteria, or the WAC. And that's a process that we use to verify that the waste that we're going to receive, that we're going to transport and then ultimately dispose of at the facility, meets the acceptance criteria for the facility. So right now, you can see on the pie chart to the right that under the Land Withdrawal Act, our volumetric limit, the amount of waste we're allowed to receive at our facility, is capped at 6.2 million cubic feet. And so that limit is set by law. That's been passed by Congress, and it's a federal law. So that is the maximum amount of transuranic waste that we're allowed to receive at the facility for our mission. And there's no plans to change that limit, but just to, in case you were wondering, the only way you could change that limit would be for Congress to pass a law and ultimately be signed by the president to actually affect a change to that volumetric limit for the facility. Right now, we've got about 44% of our volumetric capacity has been filled. So we're almost at the halfway point of our mission, which is to get 6.2 million cubic feet of waste safely to the facility. So I wanted to talk briefly about an important update to our permit that we worked on with the state and 8 different stakeholder organizations last year. And that was, there's a new provision in our permit involving what is referred to as the Legacy True Waste Disposal Plan. And the feedback we had received from stakeholders that we took to heart, which is how it ended up in our permit ultimately, was that there's a strong desire among stakeholders and the state, concerned citizens, tribal nations, everybody who is really committed to seeing all of these legacy sites actually move forward with cleanup, that they really want to make sure that there's going to be sufficient capacity in the facility, and that cleanup operations are prioritized. That the facility provides a disposal pathway for cleaning up this legacy waste, and stakeholders were very eager to ensure that the permit specified the development of a plan that would talk about how we're going to define and manage legacy true waste at the facility. And so I'll talk a little bit more detail on that in a moment. And well, let me go back. One of the challenges is that I mentioned, not to get too in the weeds technically, but the law that established the facility, establishes our mission is to dispose of defense-related transuranic waste. But there is no definition in the permit or the applicable regulations regarding what is legacy, what's considered legacy waste. And so depending on each generator site, that definition varies. And so there was a desire, like I said, I think overarching concern that there needs to be prioritization of ensuring cleanup activities continue to be prioritized, and that this facility is available to ultimately receive the waste generated from cleanup activities. And so that was why this term legacy waste really became important to understanding and defining. And so we're starting this process of, well, we've been well underway now for months, but this process of developing a plan which defines legacy waste. And as part of that plan, we've agreed to reserve panel 12 in the mine to the extent practicable to ensure that we have the capacity to continue receiving legacy waste at the facility. And fundamentally, it's about ensuring that cleanup obligations continue to receive the attention that they deserve and continuing to prioritize cleanup activity. So as part of this trying to define legacy waste, we've been engaging in quite a bit of different consultations throughout the country. We have a national mission. Obviously here, Sandia and Los Alamos are generator sites that send waste to the WIPP facility, but we also have generator and storage sites throughout the United States. And each of those communities in those areas, they have commitments, legal obligations regarding how their cleanup is going to be managed and how their waste is going to be disposed of. So it was important for us as part of understanding and defining legacy waste to really make sure we were getting out and communicating both with stakeholders, organizations, tribal nations in this region, but also throughout the entire complex, since we have our mission is national in scope at the facility. So there's been quite a bit of work that's been done with a variety of different citizens, organizations, and generator sites to work throughout this process. And kind of just continuing on this theme regarding the legacy waste, there's one of the challenges with defining and prioritizing legacy waste is really making sure we understand the different regulatory drivers at each site. Like you had a presentation earlier today about the Los Alamos consent order and the obligations associated with that. Each of our generator and storage sites has their own legal agreements that govern how waste is going to be cleaned up and disposed. And so making sure that we understand what the drivers are from a legal and compliance perspective at each site is really important to helping define what constitutes legacy waste and how to prioritize that cleanup work. There's also a number of other challenges, such as difficult waste streams. Depending on the waste stream, you could have larger containers, and just making sure we're figuring out how you're going to actually be able to ensure that you're safely able to package and transport that waste to the facility. Some of the waste comes from activities that are now 80 years in the past, and making sure as part of that characterization process that we do to ensure that the waste is able to meet our acceptance criteria, we have to make sure we understand exactly what is in that waste so we can properly characterize the waste. And so that can also pose challenges to the generator and storage sites as they're trying to develop an inventory of waste to ship to the facility. And then also understanding storage limitations at each of the generator sites and understanding kind of what their capacity limits are, both in terms of capacity, time, and any radiological limits they have in place. So those are some of the different challenges that are presented when you're trying to define a term like this in a way that works for multiple sites with different agreements, different complexities in respect to their operations, and different priorities. So just kind of turning to waste and placement, we've, this is ultimately the disposal end of our work, and in 2024 we've received and placed 500. Our goal is to receive and place 520 shipments, including 40 shipments from Los Alamos, and ensure that we have the capacity to support 17 shipments a week through our transportation carrier. Right now, we've received 35 total shipments from Los Alamos this year, and I mentioned at the beginning of my presentation that we've got 361 total shipments so far this year. From a waste and placement and mining perspective, we placed in the underground, we placed the waste in what we refer to as panels, and they're larger cells that are mined into the underground, and that's ultimately where the waste is placed. And right now we're in what's referred to as panel 8, and we work in reverse. So we started in panel 7. Filled panel 6, and now we're filled room 7, and then filled room 6, and now we're currently placing in room 5 at the underground. And if you just to give you a little sense of what you're seeing in the pictures, so if you see this miner right here, what he's doing is he's doing bolting. So that's what we call the back of the mine. The ceiling is the back of the mine in the underground, and you can see all these different bolts that are actually drilled into the back or the ceiling of the mine, and that's to ensure the stability of the work area. We refer to these efforts as ground control, and that's to just make sure that we're able to continue to operate in a safe and stable environment. And if you see on the bottom right, that's actually a picture of what the waste face looks like. And you see you've got a forklift actually placing waste for disposal in the underground. But again, we really got to get you there because a picture only tells you so much. When you're there and you've got salt dust on you, and you're actually getting to talk with the workers, I think it gives you a much different flavor of what our operation really looks like and feels like. Right now we're mining in panel 11, and this is a panel that was added as part of our permit renewal that I just mentioned with the state of New Mexico, and we started mining in December. And it takes us about 3 years to mine a complete panel in the underground. We've recently completed room 1 in panel 11, and that will be an ongoing process. When we mine, because we're mining in salt, we try to mine based on this approach of just-in-time mining. And the salt is ideal for disposal of this waste because of its plasticity. It encapsulates the waste as it continues to shift over time. But because of that plasticity, it is moving slightly every minute of every day. So we don't want to mine all of our panels in too early, because then we have to continue to do bolting and ground control and maintain that area so that it's safe for disposal and for workers obviously to be in the underground. So we try to time our mining activity so that we complete the mining for the panels and rooms that we're going to dispose of just in time for when we're going to need them. And so that's what we call that just-in-time mining. And so we're constantly looking at our schedule and planning our mining activities in order to make sure that we really get it completed in sufficient time to support our activities, but we don't want it to be sitting there empty for years, because then it becomes quite a bit of effort to then just maintain the safety of that work area. So this is kind of a diagram of what an actual panel looks like. So I mentioned we're in room 5 of panel 8, and so that's we start in room 7 and finish 6, and then we work our way backward. That's just a diagram, and we have multiple panels. After panel 8, we will then move to panel 11 in terms of waste and placement. And there's a cool picture of the underground. So I was just talking to our regulator about some of the infrastructure investments that are occurring right now at the facility, and we've got quite a bit of work that's starting to near completion. Most significantly, the Safety Significant Confinement Ventilation System, or SSCVS, and the new utility shaft. And really these two major projects will work in conjunction in order to increase the airflow in the underground. And so we're currently operating at about 170,000 cubic feet per minute of ventilation in the underground. And when we complete this new ventilation system, we will be increasing the airflow to approximately 540,000 cubic feet per minute of airflow in the underground. So we're significantly increasing ventilation in the underground, and this is really important. That allows us to ensure that we're able to safely operate and maintain a workforce in the underground to meet our operational needs. The SSCVS system is, I'll talk, I think, on the next slide a little bit more about that. So the SSCVS system, we've completed the actual construction in late May, and the project has two significant components to it: a new filter building, which has a HEPA system with 22 filtration units in that filter building, as well as a salt reduction building. And we've completed the construction, and now we're moving into the commissioning phase of this operation. So before we're actually able to start up and we get the green light that we're able to start operating this, we go through a rigorous, both an internal and then an external commissioning process to ensure that we're able to safely operate this addition to our facility. The other part of this filtration system is a new utility shaft, and this allows us to. This is allowing us to pull air in through the underground that will ultimately end up in the SSCVS ventilation and filtration system I just mentioned on the other slide. So this is where we're pulling air into the underground. And this is, again, a pretty significant construction project where we put in this new shaft, and the depth is 2,150 feet underground. So to sink that shaft is, obviously a pretty impressive project. We're currently developing we've completed the shaft, and now we're starting to develop the mine area in the underground that will connect that shaft to our existing mine. One of the things that our team, our subcontractor, Harrison Western, who has been working on this project, was really proud of was that they were able to do 80 critical lifts to safely lower the heavy mining equipment from the surface to the underground this year. And that was a pretty impressive feat. To be able to do that safely was something that took a rigorous planning and execution from our subcontractor. We've got a couple other big projects right now working, one of which is to refurbish a salt pocket, and the other is trying to make improvements to our hoisting system, which is what conveys people, equipment, salt to and from the underground. And the facility was originally designed to fulfill its mission in 25 years. And as I mentioned earlier, we're about at the midpoint of our of meeting our volumetric capacity and fulfilling our mission. And so there's definitely some major upgrades that we've been working with the Department of Energy throughout our project. And hoisting upgrades are one of our top priorities right now as we look to ensure that the facility is able to continue to be to operate safely to actually complete our mission for years to come. So with that, hopefully I know we have some members who are new and may not know a ton about WIP, and other members who know a lot about WIP. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you have, and hopefully I've given you a little bit of an overview, but I strongly encourage you to hope that we get to have you at the facility at some point in the near future.
Beverly, you want to start?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Have any of the closed panels been allowed to be encapsulated yet?
Once we've closed and leave the panels, the salt will start to encroach on those panels. So once we've actually certified closure, we install these steel bulkhead door, and then we put a large quantity of salt, and then we put another bulkhead door. So I couldn't. The short answer is, I don't know what is exactly the current conditions are around that waste, because once we've closed that area, we no longer are doing the geologic monitoring that we're doing constantly throughout all the other active areas of the mine. But the salt is constantly shifting, and it will slowly start to encroach on that waste and ultimately encapsulate it. But we're talking about a 1,000-year process for our design life. So we measure and survey the movement in the underground on a daily basis. And so while it moves a lot for a geologist, it wouldn't for us. A couple millimeters is a lot of movement for our geotechs. But we're talking large periods of time for it to actually completely encapsulate the waste.
I have another question. Years ago, DOE was investigating rail transportation for waste going to WIP. Is that still being looked at, or is that project died?
Is your name Beverly? Beverly, I don't know. We, to my knowledge, we are not currently evaluating rail transportation to the facility. But I'd be happy to look at. It's not something that's come up in any of the conversations or meetings or planning that I've been working on. But it's certainly something I'd be happy to follow up on to see if there is any active effort being put into evaluating that option. But right now, we don't have any plans currently for rail transportation in the near term.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the question.
And Ryan, maybe I can assist with that. Beverly, there are no plans within the next 4 to 5 fiscal years to investigate that option.
Mark, I believe you were next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Question is, and I have a few, when will the capacity be reached based on current projections?
You know, Mark, that's a really difficult question to answer. Any answer I give you would be speculation.
Spitball, ballpark.
You know, I'm really reluctant to provide. We're 44, like I said, we're 44% of the way through our mission, and the reason why I think it would be a fool's errand for me to spitball and give you an answer is I don't want to tell you something that I don't have confidence in, and the reason why it would be difficult to have confidence in giving you a set fixed number is not because we don't do planning and try to look at, you know, what our inventories look like for 1, 3, 5, 10 years and beyond. We absolutely do that planning. We have to do that planning, but you know, we have to also work with generator sites, and so our planning at the facility is done in conjunction with generator sites, and so their ability to dispose of their waste streams is really, you know, is a major driver for any types of planning we would do. But you know, I think I can safely say that, you know, we're over 25 years in, and we're not even at our halfway point of completing our mission. So I think I could safely speculate that it'll take at least 25 more years to complete the mission. But in terms of giving you a fixed date, I just would really, I wouldn't be able to credibly put that number out there because there's too many variables that would go into coming up with that projection at this point.
A comment on that is I've noticed that the shipments seem to be kind of on the exponential side of things, and that may change the equation over time. And it also drives how quickly an alternative site needs to be found. So it is a concern, I think, of the CAB to kind of have some feedback on that. I don't know that 25 is a good number, and as you said, you don't know. The other question I had is...
Yeah, I'm not saying 25. I'm just saying that I feel like that would be a floor that I could safely say will be here. We'll continue to be in placing waste for at least 25 more years.
I don't think I'll be here. Will the change in the legacy waste definition increase or decrease the amount of waste going to WIP?
So the definition will have no impact on the amount of waste going to WIP, and because the waste that we're allowed to receive is established by the Land Withdrawal Act. That's a federal law. So the definition of legacy waste would have no bearing on what we're ultimately allowed to receive in terms of the total volume of waste.
There's a couple of references you had, and I just, for my own edification, want to ask, what is salt reduction and what is salt pocket refurbishment?
So salt reduction refers to, actually, you would be, because when we're ventilating, when we're pulling air right out of the underground, the salt mine, as you could probably see in some of the pictures, you know, it's a dusty, it doesn't do a lot of justice to it, but you know, you're working in a dusty environment, and so the salt reduction building is, you know, a very not the most creative name, but it's designed to help pull particles of salt from the air that's being ventilated out of the facility. And in terms of the salt pocket, that refers to an area beneath our salt hoist, and we've seen some degradation in that area over time, and so we've got a contractor that's currently on site right now to replace the structural steel in that portion of the underground, and that allows us to ensure that we can continue to safely remove salt from the mine.
Last question, it's speculative. When are we all going to go to WIP?
I really, like I said, the third time I said, so I'll shut up. But we would love to have you here. I mean, in all sincerity, we're a federal. We work for the Department of Energy, and as a federal contractor, and the Department of Energy is a public agency, and so it's very important to the Department of Energy and to us as their contractor to work with educating people on our operations. And so part of that is getting people like yourselves who've put time into this board, as well as other members of the public, being able to ensure that we help educate and provide tours to the underground. It's not. It is, I think, from an operational perspective, getting a group of people onto the site and underground is certainly it's an effort on our end, but it's a very important effort, and we have to continue to do that as part of our mission. And I think that's important to the customer. It's important to us. Right now, we're doing this because of some work that we've got scheduled in October, November timeframe as part of bringing the new ventilation system online. We're having to restrict the amount of tours that we're able to offer to the underground during that planned evolution of work. But it's only for, restricting for a short period of time, and as soon as we can make the schedules work, we would love to have you there.
Thank you, Ryan. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Joseph, you have the floor.
Mr. Vice Chair. Mr. Secretary,
Former.
I remember you. We had a real good discussion about emergency management. And when I think about my community asking me, not too long ago, you heard about what happened with here in Santa Fe. When you look at the local newspaper, it will say NNSA overturned semi on US 84-285 was hauling demolition debris from Llano. Super stacks, 4 of them, so forth and so on. In your community, when it comes to emergency management with the WIP, one way or the other, it still complements the WIP transportation corridor that starts from Llano that ends up in your facility, one way or the other. And it still impacts the community in many different ways. It could be the positive way, or it could be the negative way. Of what I've seen so far, of what I've experienced so far with the transportation program that's coming from Llano, and the way Llano, regardless of who's doing the packaging, N3B or NNSA or so forth and so on, where there's low level, high level, they're doing one hell of a job, an excellent job doing that. So this accident that occurred recently, right, which was August 18th, I got a chance to actually observe the actual scenario. And what concerns me about this whole thing is that, like in your facility, what areas can you share with us in terms of emergency management that we can use that's a positive thing, that we can collaborate, learn from your facility when you're working with your community on the preparation in an event of another leak, another scenario, especially like with your local emergency planning committee, if you have one there in your city or your county, and then where does that fit in training your first responders, that maybe we can learn something from you guys and bring it down over here to the Norte, to the northern part of our state, to improve and enhance our emergency response in an event. This one was definitely a shit show. Oh, sorry. It was it's another word. It was you know what I mean.
I know. Yeah.
It was crazy just watching it, just seeing it, and it freaked me out too. And as a first responder, in an event, if this scenario would have been a lot more worse, the contamination of radiological material, nuclear material, so forth and so on, it would have been greater. So could you show how that would work? I mean, you know.
I would say, first of all, one of the things that the Department of Energy really expects and demands of their contractors is to be collaborating with other sites throughout the complex. And there's a lot of formal mechanisms within the Department of Energy that actually provide or formal opportunities to share information and lessons learned. So I think we would absolutely be willing to continue that collaborative approach moving forward. And so I don't just in terms of your big picture question, how are we willing to continue to collaborate and share information? Absolutely. I'm not sure that I know that I'm proud of the emergency management group falls within my program. And that includes our emergency management team, our fire department, and our medical services group. And so I'm very proud of our team. One of the things I'm most proud of, though, is that they're constantly embracing this idea of continuous improvement. And so they're as you know, given your experience, emergency management really comes down to planning and preparation, and you have to constantly be preparing for hopefully an event that will never come, and it requires and planning has to be done in a way where you've obviously we look at the potential risks and scenarios and develop a pretty extensive drilling program and then exercise program where we not only evaluate ourselves on a regular basis, but we actually then have an assessment from our customer, from individuals from not only at the site, but from actual DOE headquarters come in and evaluate our annual exercise every single year. So we're constantly looking for opportunities to improve. One of the things that I think we've done really well recently is we've improved our cooperative agreements with our local communities. We had good agreements in place, but there were some areas, for example, we have agreements with different medical facilities in Lubbock, Carlsbad, and Hobbs, for example. But we also there's a world-class medical facility in El Paso, and an opportunity came for us to include that facility as part of our in a cooperative agreement to be available to assist if we had an emergency event and we had to fly someone to get treated there. And so we're constantly looking to build those partnerships and strengthen those partnerships, both with medical facilities, fire departments, sheriff's offices, police, state police. So we're constantly looking for ways that we can continue to expand those cooperative agreements, and then also making sure that you're including them in when you're drilling, because if you've got a cooperative agreement but you've never actually practiced executing, you haven't talked to each other, you haven't included them as part of a drill, you're really not preparing for success. So we not only have agreements with throughout our regional network, but we also include them in our drilling so that if hopefully we don't, but if we ever did have to need them to be involved in a response, we've already been able to work out how that communication is going to occur and ensure that we're able to, when game day comes, that we can execute without thinking, that we've drilled it and we're prepared. So those are some of the things that we do, but by no means would we say that we're a finished project. We're constantly looking to improve and learn.
Well, I appreciate the answer, because I didn't even know I had this. Okay, I got it. Thank you. It happens. The state of New Mexico has a Department of Homeland Security, as you know, right?
Yep.
And it's under the purview of the emergency response, the State Emergency Response Commission, to oversee all the local emergency planning committees in the state. So the county of Santa Fe is working on creating their own, well, they're creating their LEPC. But what's interesting is that I haven't been able to see this in the last, since maybe 2011, or even maybe earlier, of these local, state LEPCs interacting with tribal emergency managers involving the WIP transportation route. And so I get it about the WIP transports coming out. When they're on Llano property, on DOE property, that's their purview to make sure that stuff is taken care of, and they're doing their job. But then once it leaves the property, DOE property, and it goes into the interstate or the highways, and especially through tribal nations, then there's always the pointing the finger, like in this scenario, the only thing that I heard from the community was, oh, it's all Llano. No, it's all N3B's fault. No, it's the finger is being pointed. And so the point I'm trying to make on this one is, how in the world can we work to get the word out that in terms of educating the public, knowledge-wise, that that N3B, they're doing their job. NNSA, whatever, Llano, down the line, everyone's doing their job, but the right, accurate information is going out, and it's not going out. So when I look at the media, the media, consider the source, yeah. And the way they write it down, an overturned flatbed semi-trailer that led to an hour-long shutdown Monday of a stretch of US 84-285 into Santa Fe near the New Mexico 599 exit was hauling 4 super sacks of demolition debris from Los Alamos National Laboratory's Technical Area 52, the National Nuclear Security Administration Los Alamos Field Office announced. It's Panic City. And what I like to see happen is, how can we work? How can I know that's out of the CAB's mission. It's not even the mission, the CAB's mission, to be talking about this stuff anyways. But I'm just saying, to collaborate and help disseminate the information, of good information, in an event, I hope nothing like that happens, but training-wise. And then you answer a lot of the questions, but I do appreciate that. You don't have to answer by what I just said, but.
Well, thank you.
Joseph, just to jump in and save Ryan a little bit here, because that's a different contract, and so we can't, speak to other contracts, but I certainly can. And so to your, I think the heart of your question, the Citizens Advisory Board is to advise the Department of Energy. And so with complete respect for everyone here, absolutely it's within your purview to make recommendations, even if they're not in the context of the presentations that you are receiving, because we want to hear those recommendations. That's the purpose for this board existing.
And I appreciate that, ma'am. I want conversation. I want dialogue. I want discussion, straight up. I don't no sugarcoating the topic. Just being there at that scene was a really freaky opportunity to, I don't wish it upon anybody. Because if that would have been a fatality when they were pulling them out of that vehicle, and the call came in on dispatch that the cab was on fire, and you had these Good Samaritans pulling them out, and then, they don't know what's there. The rap team shows up. Who cares? I mean, who knows? They don't know that's the rap team. They see all these little monitors walking around, little Martians, whatever. Who cares, right? I care. But I appreciate the conversation. Board members, thank you for your respect. And Mr. Vice Chair, gracias.
I'd just like to add a couple of things, having some background in that. State police has jurisdiction over all hazmat events that occur on the highways. And in the transportation documents, there'll be a 24-hour available number to contact for emergency support. State police would become the incident command, and at that time they would determine whatever resources needed to mitigate the response. And they would have that emergency contact, and they also would coordinate with the state EOC and activate if necessary. And in this particular case, it puzzled me because this was not a radioactive shipment. And sending out RAP to a non-radioactive kind of made me wonder why, but.
And let me jump into, this shipment was not destined for WIP.
Yeah, I was about to jump in.
So I'm happy to assist here.
Well, after you, I'll add a little bit more on how we monitor our transportation, because I think that would be helpful too. So I'll jump in after you.
I think, and again, this isn't. I'm concerned that sometimes when we are sharing things that are or are not within our jurisdiction to speak on, it sounds like we're pointing fingers at each other, and we are not. It's that we don't have the authority to speak on behalf of others, and so it's difficult, right? Like Department of Energy has all these little parts, and it's hard to distinguish where the boundaries are, and so I can share to some degree because, again, this was an NNSA shipment. It was not an EM shipment. And so I don't actually have the authority to speak on a lot of the details. But I can talk about shipping in general. And so hypothetically speaking, if we, EM and N3B, had a similar situation, I would probably call the Radiological Assistance Program out of an abundance of caution. And I would probably do that as a verification measure so that as I'm communicating with the general public, I can give concrete answers that state this was not doses of concern. Here's what we have. Look, I had people on the ground immediately to verify. And I absolutely appreciate too that can come across as like, well, what overkill, right? And in this case, maybe it was, but as somebody sitting in that decision-making chair, similar to, I also would have called RAP team. So I share the RAP team because it gives me that extra sense of assurance when I'm getting in front of the public and saying, and getting in front of first responders and saying, it's okay. I'm not lying. I have levels of assurance. So that's just sharing. That's why I probably would have made the same decision.
So, and just to add on, I didn't want to get, I was really trying to be responsive to kind of the spirit of the question about just the need for more collaboration based on that example. But just to clarify, that was not a shipment that was coming to the WIP facility. So I didn't want to jump in, lead with that, because I just understood the bigger concern was just understanding, your observations based on that experience and a desire to see, what types of improvements could be made. And so that was how I understood your question. But just to kind of piggyback on what Manny had mentioned, for the WIP facility, our transportation record and how we conduct our shipments are tracked in a monitoring room 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And we know that by a GPS system, and we know exactly where every single shipment is from the moment it leaves the generator site until the moment it arrives in our gate at the facility. So if a driver were to have an unscheduled stop, for example, a communication would be made immediately with that driver to make sure we understand exactly where they are, what they're doing, what is occurring. They also monitor weather throughout the entire route to make sure that if if we're encountering a changing weather situation, that we plan and we take a stop and wait for us to be able to safely proceed with transporting the waste ultimately to the facility. And the whole
We're gonna
time.
have to, cut this short
Yeah, sorry.
because we're
Anyway, I just
a
wanted
little
to be
bit pressed for
clear that-
time. We
Yeah.
have time for maybe, hopefully both questions if it's short.
Thank you. I just want to go back for just a moment to something Beverly was asking about rail. And I know, don't get excited, I know it's not DOE. Holtec is a private corporation. They've been trying to be permitted in southern New Mexico to bring spent fuel rods by rail from all over the country. Am I wrong?
I'm truly not read in enough to say one way or another.
So you've heard of it?
I am aware of the discussions for rail shipping. I am not aware, I'm not in on the discussions for any
Okay, well,
specifics.
let me help you. Holtec has been trying to be permitted, and again, it's not DOE. I know that it's not the purview of this committee, so, but there have been for 3 years now. And this is, I'm sure, much more than Class 2. And it is near, it's probably not very far from the WIP site. I don't know exactly where, but it is southern New Mexico.
Yeah, it's not too far from the
So I just wanted to clarify that. You have heard correctly. And I have one more question. So the WIP used to, it's pilot, it used to be the WIP pilot project. So pilot to me means it's a tryout, right? Does that mean there's plans for another one?
You know, when WIP was established, there were it was not planned to be the first and only geologic repository for transuranic waste, or for, you know, we've also had different plans for we still need to manage and safely dispose of defense-related and non-defense-related high-level waste. So no, WIP is not the only facility that was planned. It is the only facility that we have right now, and you know, a part of our new permit requirement that we worked with the state was to provide an annual update to the state of New Mexico, which will be made publicly available. Just providing an update on efforts to site another repository.
Sterling, you've been waiting a long time.
That's all right. But thank you for the question, Eleanor.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. Move this up a little bit. Ryan, is Don Hancock one of the people involved in your consultations? And see, that's slide number 7.
Absolutely. You can't have a conversation about WIP without having Don at the table.
Thank you.
Okay, and then with that, then, if no other questions, unless we're out of time for questions, we will move on to public comment. Do we have anybody here that would like to make a comment? Nobody signed up?
You can ask Scott Kodak.
Do we have anybody online that would like to opportunity to speak? Well, I'm sorry I rushed your conversation. We can get back to that maybe. Okay, well then, with no other public comment, then we'll have an update from Mr. Geinstaff.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I do have a few updates today. Manice is keeping me on track here with bullets, so thank you, Manice. Just so everybody knows and is aware, the NNMCAB Chairs Meeting held in Oak Ridge and hosted by the Oak Ridge Citizens Advisory Board is next week. Manny and Beverly will be attending, and thank you very much for doing that for us, and along with the CAB staff. They're there to keep me in line so I don't do anything too crazy. The tour of the Oak Ridge Reservation is scheduled for Tuesday, September 24th, and the meeting will be held September 25th and a half day on the 26th. If you are interested in attending via Zoom, please register via the link that was sent out by Bridget. And the agenda is also going to be on that link as well. That did go out, right? Okay. The Risk Evaluation and Management Committee will be held October 2nd at 1 p.m. via WebEx. And the next meeting of the CAB was initially scheduled for November 6th. That has been changed to November 13th, and that was made to accommodate Dr. Inez Trier, who is leading the hexavalent chromium independent review. And if the report is ready, we've been told that, and if she's available to do that, to present to the CAB that day to talk about the report, if it's already out and open to the public. We've also moved the meeting from the OK Conference Center to the Lodge at Santa Fe, and please make sure you know where you're headed that day. All right. The November meeting will be the final meeting for the year, and we don't have the schedule completed, finalized yet, but when it is, Bridget and the staff will get it sent out. And that's what I have for my update today.
Questions for Keith? Okay, we're going to back up for a minute, and we do have some public comment. Scott, are you with us?
Yes, can you hear me?
Please go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. First off, I'd like to say the audio is, first off, I'd like to say I'm Scott Kovac with Nuclear Watch New Mexico. Thanks everyone for letting me speak today, give some public comments. But I'd like to say the audio is kind of bad on certain microphones, and it was kind of hard to hear at some point. So you may look at that. Some of the mics were working, and some of them seemed to be just fine. So anyway, I'd like to thank NMED for revising the 2016 consent order. We worked. Nuclear Watch New Mexico was very familiar with the 2016 consent order and basically kind of denounced it from the beginning. But we appreciate the NMED's working with DOE and DOE working with NMED to get the schedule, work on the schedule and get the timing back in shape here. And I really await the details here in the next couple of weeks. I'm sure we'll hear more about it. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. So with that, brings us to the end of all this, I guess. So a few closing comments. I would like to thank the IT staff. I had the opportunity to get in here a little bit early, and there was a lot of wires around this place. I don't know where they all went, but this is magic stuff. Good job, guys. And secondly, thanks to the staff for setting everything up. Everything just worked great once again. And thanks everybody for attending. We appreciate your participation, and it was good to meet all the new members. And with that, Mr. Grindstaff, your gavel.
Keep the gavel away. This meeting's adjourned. Thank you.